Chairperson and Managing Director, Biocon Limited, Kiran Mazumdar-Shaw. And your moderator, Chief Technology Correspondent, Axios, Ina Fried.
Thank you both. Thanks. You know, there's this phrase, a tough act to follow, but...
That is a tough act to follow.
So I want to continue, basically, the conversation that we've started on this broader question of where technology is taking us. And Ash, I know you want to talk about more than just your time at defense and the defense side of things. Okay. But I think it is a big question of when we ask, is technology creating more problems than it solves? Certainly, sure. The physical security is an important one. In your work over the most recent years, do you feel like the technology is making us safer? Is it making us less safe?
It's both, and I think that you have to give the same answer to that in the security field as you do to the question Raphael poses to all of us in this whole thing, which is innovation serving the broader human good or the other way? My answer to that is that's up to us and up to MIT and to the young people out here, the future generation of innovators. And in the security area, just to give you a specific example of that, the people who here at MIT and elsewhere began the nuclear age, which is the most fearful form still of destructiveness all these years later. They not only did that because they believed they needed to end World War II and to stop war in Europe, but they also invented arms control and non-proliferation, and they believed that these were two sides of the same coin, and that they were responsible for, they had an opportunity because of what they knew, and a responsibility because of what they knew to address the larger meaning. And one of the reasons why I wanted to be associated with MIT, and I'm so grateful to be, is not only that I like young people and connecting with them because they're the future, but to interest them in using innovation for the whole of public purpose and human purpose. Eric said something very arresting in that last panel I was just watching backstage about jobs being replaced and that's or by machines. So to me, that leads me to say, well, if the driverless car is coming, where is the carless driver going? Who now drives the vehicle and would not be doing that? I care about that, and I think it's something that innovative minds can address. Some of the answers were given in that last panel about cultural and enjoyment, but people also want to be part of the economy and part of contributing, making money. And these are people who have skills, they've worked, they are situationally aware, it's a huge reservoir of talent. Who's working on that problem? And isn't that an arresting problem for an ambitious innovator? I think so, and there are lots of things like that. So that's why I think the answer, Raphael, to your question is it can be a good thing, but we have to work at that, and we need to challenge ourselves.
One of the things we talked about in the last section is, you know, there's the sort of what is happening in the society, and then there's human reaction to it, and fear being a huge thing that we've seen over the last year. And I'm curious, how do you make sense of what's happened in the political sphere, what's happened, you know, climate change, obviously a very important topic for you. You know, we've seen a fear-based response, I think, to what seemed to be decided science up until a few months ago. How much do we need to take into account as we're planning for the future, this sort of innate human reaction to scarcity?
Well, in the case of security, what you're saying, yes, people are fearful, and rightly so, because the rest of life, all the good things in life can't be had unless we're safe. And so my job was to protect our people and protect our society and protect civilization. That's incredibly important, and it is an arresting mission. And so when I tried to reach out to the technology community and say, please help me, please help us, work with us. And there were issues like Snowden and lots of other things that made people sometimes hesitant. And I'd say, I'll meet you halfway. But isn't this an important thing to give just a piece of your life to? I'm not asking people to do it for their whole life, but to make a contribution. It's part of something bigger than themselves and very important. And yes, the public's motivated by fear, but our job is to make them feel safe. And so I thought it was important in the case of ISIL, for example, as we put this strategy together there, and to tell people we're going to defeat this. We're going to destroy this phenomenon. And not try to tell them they shouldn't be afraid of it, to tell them that we are the many and the strong, and we will destroy this evil thing. And we're going to. We're in the process of doing it right now. Darn it. That's the same thing with everything else. People need to have the confidence that.
Are you any less confident or optimistic now than you were, say, January 19th?
Well, I'm very careful not to speak. There's a tradition, and I haven't forgotten my manners, of not speaking, speaking to my successors. I wish them well. We're all in this together. I do anything I can to help them, and so I did my time there. I'm still committed to those issues. I believe in them, but I'm going to be working on other things now.
All right, well, maybe we'll get back to putting you in the hot seat. But, it seems like one of the things that we've missed, and I hope you'll help us get to, is a lot of the discussion around artificial intelligence, about robots, about advancement in technology in general. We tend to have this conversation around the jobs it's displacing and forget that for a lot of the developing world, technology isn't replacing human jobs or things that exist. It's scaling things that previously weren't scalable and delivering things that weren't there in the first place. And you talk about your work and what you see in India and elsewhere.
So you're absolutely right. I think we forget about the under-resourced, under-skilled developing world. And what we are looking for is technology to bridge a lot of these deficits. So if you think about a country like India, now India is very excited about a digital world. It's trying to create the biggest digital market in the world, okay? It's trying to create a cashless society. It's trying to create digital banking. And just take for example, Uber and its Indian counterpart Ola. They've created 1 million jobs just because India today has 650 million mobile phones, which have suddenly allowed people to have service on demand, which was never possible before. I mean, you couldn't even hail a taxi in most parts of the country, and today you can. So it's transforming lives. So we look at technology as a huge job multiplier. I mean, Uber and Ola themselves, as I said, have created 1 million jobs. If you think about the 650 million mobile phones that are in India, that has created 4 million support jobs. So, the way I look at technology, the way I look at all that's happening today, I think for every job that new technology displaces, yes, it does replace and displace labor directly, but it does create an ecosystem that multiplies those jobs. And I think that's the way we are looking at it. So we are looking at technology and all the the automation and robotics and all the other things that Industry 4.0 is all about, is to really create a new digital economy that is actually going to multiply jobs, but in a new way. Now, new way means that you've got to skill up, you've got to scale and skill. That too is going to require educational platforms that are technology-led.
And how is that elsewhere? Because, I mean, we talk a lot about how ill-equipped our education system is for the jobs of the future. India is known for, an incredibly large educated workforce. Are people there having the same fear that India isn't educating Indians for the jobs of the future, or is that not really the concern there?
I think, India does have a huge challenge because today you have you talk about a huge skilled, educated force. It's not true. In terms of our whole economy, it's a very small part of that economy. But if you think of the fact that we need to educate, we have 800 million people below the age of 35. We need to create 10 million jobs a year to just keep our GDP growing. It's not an easy task, and we know that we have a huge skill shortage. Today I spent some really interesting time at edX, Now, edX is actually developing this huge MOOCs platform. And I think India can actually take advantage of these kind of modern and novel technology-led educational platforms to skill and reskill. I think that's what at least our parts of the developing world are looking at. How do you scale using technology? How do you skill and reskill using technology? You know, they say the blue-collar workers of tomorrow are going to be coders, but how are you going to teach coding to everyone? I think this is what it's all about.
And scale is really important. I mean, you know, you look at something like the field you directly work in healthcare. I mean, we approach it, again, in the States from, we have a doctor-patient model that for all of its challenges does deliver healthcare to most of the population. Whereas in a lot of the world, the doctor-patient model won't ever scale. And these new technologies open up new doors. And so I'm curious, one, is that something you're seeing firsthand? And then also, can you maybe talk to a couple examples where the fact that the reality is different actually leads to leapfrogging, where because we're trying to incrementally improve a system that exists, and the developing countries are trying to get something they've never had, the real innovation happens in those less mature markets.
No, absolutely. I think Solve itself has a huge opportunity to develop and solve new problems of global healthcare. Now, in the developing world, as you rightly said, I mean, there's a huge deficit of skills and resources. So in a country like India, we need 3 million hospital beds. We need 3 million doctors. We need 6 million nurses. It's not going to happen without technological intervention. So today you're getting a lot of innovation focusing on point-of-care diagnostics, on telemedicine, and many, many other such health delivery models, which is actually creating a large number of jobs. We have 1 million health workers today delivering healthcare using all these new technologies. But you know, it's only scratching the surface. And if you think about those kind of models, I think we really, really are looking at innovation that can really transform healthcare delivery. Today, I think when we keep talking about the healthcare system in the US, which also needs fixing in a different way, again, technology, I believe, is going to rescue that as well. Because again, I think the US healthcare model is not using technology as efficiently and intelligently as it should. But if you look at the developing world, we need to basically build new technologies and new platforms that can deliver healthcare more efficiently and more affordably, because that's the affordable innovation that we are looking at to disrupt and transform healthcare in the developing world.
And Ash, I want to bring it back to you and sort of what you were talking about. It seems like one of the other issues for the US, and I imagine other developed countries, is not always not having the technology, but the people making the decisions and the people creating the two technologies often have lived in fairly different worlds. And one of the things that the Obama administration in general and your department in particular tried to do is, as you talked about, bring those people in and benefit from that. Talk about some of how the government benefited from having an influx of people that really did get technology.
Well, there's a long tradition of it in our country and right here at MIT. And when I started out as a physicist, it was part of the culture that you owed a piece of your interest and a piece of your life to public life and to the world, not just to the United States, but to the world. It was just something that the generation older than I instilled in you, that it came with the territory. And I sense in the younger technologists today, and I was able to tap into this to answer your question in defense, these are innovative young people. They want to make a difference in life. They want to do something of consequence. And they can be inspired by the big problems of the world. They really can. Now, what they don't want, Kiran, is, as Kiran said, is to be tied down to whatever their circumstance is, and they don't want to necessarily spend their whole lives doing it. And sometimes the government can seem like a life sentence. And better to, and so you need to give them paths, and this is what I try to do in defense. Just come in and work for one project 1 year, just give it a chance. And even if you decide after a year to leave, and I had to create those avenues that would allow people to do that, get them cleared and that kind of thing. Some of them stayed, which was great. But if they left, they could all go home and for the rest of their lives, tell their families what they had done and be proud of it because it made a huge difference. And that's what gives meaning to innovative life, and problems that are big or like that. All we need to do is steer these young people in this direction, and they're here in this audience, they're here at this institute, and they just needed to be pointed in this direction. And you got to give them a doable path.
Well, and doesn't it also help, and this question is really for both of you, doesn't it also help us create, and us being the technologists, the technology community, doesn't it help us create more useful products if we take a step back and look at the broader context, the people that we're creating the technology for? I wonder if not only the people that served you have a better self-esteem and proudness, but also a better understanding for how the technology they're creating is going to be used. And similarly, I imagine there's one of the reasons we see so many passionate entrepreneurs come out of, whether they're Indian entrepreneurs that stay in India, Indian American entrepreneurs, is this desire to use that technology to improve the world that they've seen. Will we be better served if we build more bridges to connect the technology community with the world they're building the products for? And is there enough of that today?
I think, we have a big problem in most parts of the world, which is that the policy makers are not really including these technology pioneers to be part of the policy making process. I think in India we clearly see it because everyone's getting so riled about surge pricing, for instance, in the Uber rides. Ride shares, there was suddenly a huge problem about how do you regulate sharing rides and what have you. Now I think this is because we are actually getting antiquated policy makers who are in a time warp. I don't think they're seeing technology the way the young people are seeing it. And that's why I completely agree, and I think Secretary Carter mentioned that as well, saying that you've got to get these young people to be part of that new process. Without that, you're not going to be able to take full advantage of technology and how it can actually improve the world and your own communities.
So I think the advice to all of us old people is pretty simple. It's to include more younger people in their thinking. What would your advice be to the people in the audience, to the young technologists? What do you think they could benefit from?
Take a careful look at the opportunity presented by all the aspects of a problem that motivates you. And think about your responsibilities as an innovator and a future citizen. I hate to say responsibility because young people don't like to have something laid on them that way. But it's really, the opportunity that exists out there for their own fulfillment, but also to do something greater in the world. And you can use your innovative mind in essentially trivial ways. And some people do, and they create.
Yeah, my old boss, Kara Swisher, used to call it that too much of Silicon Valley is working on assisted living for millennials. Sort of bringing on-demand cereal so that you don't have to stir the milk in yourself.
Yeah.
You've talked about the opposite end, which is technology bringing things that people desperately need but have never had access to. Do you guys feel in America we have too much of a problem of some of our smartest minds solving problems that really aren't the ones we need to be solving?
Well, I think, everything is going to find a level. I mean, you can't sort of, restrict or impede innovation, no matter how silly it is, I think you just have to let it go with the flow. And I think you will see that there is a natural leveling out of what is going to work and what is not going to work. So it doesn't matter. I mean, if you have these ready to, swallow cereals. It doesn't matter. The market will decide whether that's a good innovation or not. But I think at the end of the day, we must make sure that you don't sort of stifle innovation in any form or sort. And I think the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity we have is really to adapt and embrace innovation in every way.
Secretary Carter, let you have the last word.
Yeah, no, she just had the last word. It's not a birthright that technology does only good things or only bad things. That's a choice that we make. And historically, the burden has been overwhelmingly positive. And so it has been rewarding for people who get a kick out of thinking of new things, like the people in this room, also to get the satisfaction out of contributing to human destiny. And I think that's true in all societies, or can be true in all societies. And it's the greatest challenge of a great institution like this.
Well, thank you both for a great discussion, and I hope for everyone here, it really is the start of a conversation. I think it's critically important that we all sort of engage in this discussion of how technology is making our lives better, what it's not solving on its own, and I know many of the people in this room have great answers for that. So I thank you very much. I also wanted to let you know that I'll be appearing in your inbox tomorrow. I edit our daily newsletter, Login, which is Axios' daily tech newsletter. So look for that in your inbox. If you like it, subscribe. If not, print it out, wad it into a ball, and throw it at me next time. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lovely to meet you. Ina, thank you so much.